Today is Monday, January 29th. We're going to go around the bases with our MLB insider at the New York Post. He is none other than John Heyman. John, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well. We're going to start off with the New York Mets. We heard the news over the weekend, Adam Ottavino coming to the New York Mets to help strengthen that bullpen, coming back to stay in Queens. But, it's been quiet otherwise for the Mets. So, John, do you have any update on what exactly the Mets' plans are for the rest of this offseason heading into spring training?
Well, I think they're looking at lefty relievers now. Obviously, they have Brooks Raley, who's a good lefty reliever, but they'd like to have two. So I think Wandy Peralta is the best guy out there. That does make sense. There are some other lefties out there: Amir Garrett, Jake Diekman, Alexander. There's 5 or 6 professional left-handers out there who could get major league deals potentially. Wandy Peralta is clearly the best one. He's had a sub-3 ERA all 3 years with the Yankees. Mets seem to like signing Yankees. Obviously, they've gotten Severino and Bader already, so why not make it Peralta as well? I do hear he has another 4 or 5 teams looking at him as well, so he's in a pretty good position, I think, now for it being so late. But I think the Mets are clearly one of the more likely landing spots for him. I still think I'd like to see a DH, whether it be a JD Martinez or a Justin Turner. And Turner could play some third base too if Brett Baty struggles as he did last year. I do believe that Brett Baty will be a good player at some point. We'll see if he's ready. I don't blame the Mets for giving him a try and going with Baty rather than signing Matt Chapman or something like that at this point. But right now, I could see a bat, maybe to bat behind Alonso. So
Yeah.
JD Martinez would make sense. Give Alonso the best shot at 50 home runs instead of the usual 45 or whatever. But it would be nice to have that big bat behind Alonso. Might end up being Baty or Alvarez if they really develop. But right now, we'd like to have that sure thing number 5 hitter bat behind Alonso.
Yeah, it certainly is something that we discussed a lot, John, is how are they going to handle that DH position? Could they add another bat? And like you alluded to, a JD Martinez or a Justin Turner. Just real quick, for the Mets, do you get the sense that they're willing to spend, let's say, a little bit more for that JD Martinez, or is that just a hope and the Mets fans can look at, like, we can really look at maybe JD Martinez as a possible target?
Well, we had David Stearns on the podcast with Joel Sherman, and it didn't sound like they were anxious, but maybe he's just negotiating. I don't know. It felt like relief was something more that they're looking at, and I do know they're looking at a left-handed reliever. He kind of said that on the podcast, and true to his word, he did sign Ottavino, and I know they are in pursuit of Peralta or perhaps somebody behind Peralta if they don't get Peralta. That's more my wish, that I'd like to see them get that DH. And I get it. I mean, I see people complaining that Steve Cohen is cheap or whatever. At this point, he's over the Steve Cohen tax threshold. So he's basically paying double for these guys that he's bringing in now. So if you bring in a guy like JD Martinez, who could get, I don't know, off the top of my head, $15 million or something like that, or even more, 20 million, you're paying double. Just because someone's a billionaire doesn't mean they should be wasteful. They still have a payroll that's within shouting distance of the Dodgers. I know their team may not seem as good as the Dodgers and isn't as good as the Dodgers, but the payroll is right up there at number 2 right now on the hit parade. And I get it. So I don't blame Steve Cohen. I think the bigger question is, are they competitive? Because that was kind of the promise, that they would be competitive. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder to some degree. Are they competitive with the Braves and the Phillies in their division? I don't think so. The Braves are outstanding. Phillies, I think, really good as well. So maybe not competitive with them, but competitive can mean a number of things to different people. And as far as being a potential wild card team, I'm not going to rule them out. So I think they're probably covered at competitive. I know they didn't operate like a huge market team this winter, but they filled the gaps. They got Bader, which is nice for the defense up the middle. Severino has got talent, as we know. If he's healthy, that could be a potentially very good signing. Minaya, solid signing. I think their rotation looks solid, and frankly, to me, it looks deeper than the Yankee rotation. And if they do sign Peralta, their bullpen is not bad. I made a comment in my notes on Friday for the Post that that bullpen, that bridge to Diaz looked pretty shaky at this point, but now they've got Ottavino. If they add a left-hander, it's not bad. So, I mean, the team is pretty solid, and I know they didn't operate like a lot of Mets fans were hoping that Steve Cohen would always operate, but I get it. You know, the rules, you know, a lot of teams are going to be over that threshold, but the Mets are way over the threshold, and it's going to be rather expensive for a team that does not look like a World Series contender this coming season.
Yeah, and let's not forget, you're also paying the penalty not only in the tax you do drop in the draft, and you lose some international signing bonus money. So it does penalize you for the future as well for spending that kind of money. But John, you bring up some great points there. Let's talk about the Yankees on the other side. What are you hearing with them? You know, we've heard rumors with Blake Snell. He's still out there. I know Montgomery's still out there, but Snell's really that piece I think a lot of Yankees fans are looking at, because that rotation, while they added Marcus Stroman, still has question marks when you look at it past Garrett Cole. So, what are you looking at for the Yankees as they head into spring training? What other possible pieces or moves could be out there for them?
Well, I mean, Snell is certainly going to be someone they're going to is going to be talked about, at least publicly. Now, are they talking about him, the Yankees and Scott Boras, the agent? I'm not so sure at this point. The Yankees are the team, one known team to have made an offer to Blake Snell. So obviously, it's an area of interest for the fans, but they were not close. So are their chances better than a number of other teams? I'm not sure that they are. They're now saying that it was either or, you know, that they got Stroman, and now that they have Stroman, that they won't go for Snell. That's what the party line is at the moment. But I mean, it's all part of negotiation, right? I mean, who knows what can happen,
Right.
whether the price can drop. I mean, obviously, at the price he's asking, I certainly believe him that they're not in on Blake Snell. But what if his price drops to something closer to what they had offered? Would they be out? I couldn't say that for sure at this point. So, I mean, that's the one that I think is interesting. To me, Montgomery, I doubt he wants to come back. He had some things to say when he went to St. Louis and got a bigger role there. Then he got an even bigger role, helped the Rangers win the World Series. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that he's taking a while because he's waiting for Texas to solve its local TV issue that it has going on right now that's kind of prevented them from big signings. And they did sign David Robertson. They made some smaller signings, but this local TV issue seems to be the holdup there with Montgomery, and he seems to be waiting for that one. Now, if that doesn't resolve itself in any way, does that mean the Yankees have a chance? I mean, I don't want to rule anything out. You never know, but there are a number of teams that are interested in Jordan Montgomery.
Mhm.
Very solid left-hander on the rise, durable. So, I mean, maybe the price will have to come down a little bit, but it's going to be high. I mean, look at what Nola got. He had a better year than Nola. He's thrown fewer innings than Nola. He was just as good, if not better, in the postseason as Nola. So that's going to be a big price tag as well. It feels like, he may be close to what Snell is going to end up getting. So not sure the likelihood of that either. Yankees are talking to relievers, but from my understanding is they're kind of looking for a bargain. They're hoping that someone's going to, I don't want to say panic, but that someone's going to say, you know what, we don't have anything better at this point. It's 2 weeks from spring training. We better sign certainly Brazier, Maton, a lot of good relievers still out there, including Peralta, their old friend, the lefty. So we shall see. I do think they'll come up with a lefty. They did bring in Gage from the Astros today. They claimed him on waivers, and he should be on the team. A good pitcher. I'm sure they like getting somebody from the Astros, but and the Yankees, as I said, the Yankees are better. They're a better team, certainly with Soto. But I'm sure the fans are interested to see what they can do with that rotation because it
Yeah.
does look a little thin right now.
It does. And I think what's interesting, John, is you say that they're waiting to see what that market is developing right now with the Snell, and not so much Montgomery, but more you keep talking about Snell. It's there's that hope, I think, for fans.
Sure.
Does that market keep developing into there's not many suitors for Blake Snell, and he's kind of left with the last person sitting at the table? And could it be the Yankees? Is that your sense maybe that this is the way it's going, or is it we're going to get to right before pitchers and catchers report, and Snell could be waiting till then or even after to get a deal done?
Oh, he could be waiting after. I mean, Bryce Harper, who's signed for $330 million, which was a record at the time, signed February 28th. So that was 2 weeks into spring training with Philadelphia. We know that has obviously worked out very well. sometimes these great players, they take a while because they have a certain price in mind and nobody has met it to this point. And sometimes it takes an injury or something else. I mean, look at Prince Fielder. This is a long time ago, probably before your time, but I mean, he waited a long time, well into February. Victor Martinez got hurt with Detroit, and they said, hey, we need to get somebody who's out there. And Prince Fielder was still out there, and he got $214 million. In hindsight, that did not turn out to be a great deal for them. But it happens. It's not only the guys who are like the AAA or the quadruple A players who are waiting a while. Sometimes it's the better players who are waiting a while, and probably shouldn't be shocked. It is a little surprising that more than 1/3 of the top players are still available out on the market at this point, with less than 2 weeks to go, or about 2 weeks to go for spring training. But they'll get their jobs eventually. Some of them might end up being bargains. I know they don't want to be bargains, but they may. But others will get their money.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up that point. I mean, that's where I want to go with this next question is the starting rotation market. Where are we at with some of these pitchers? I know you talked about Montgomery and Snell. How is this going to develop, like you said, over the next couple of weeks before we get into pitchers and catchers?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's anyone's guess. I know nobody wants to hear that, but Montgomery, I think his first choice would be Texas, and I think he is their first choice as well. So if they can work that out, he'd go to Texas. We've heard Boston was connected to Montgomery. Potentially, you could see if the Anaheim or the Angels decide they want to try to do something, maybe. They did bulk up their bullpen. They signed our old friend Aaron Hicks today, or brought him into the mix. We'll see if Artie Moreno decides he wants to spend that money that he saved with Shohei Ohtani going up I-5 to, or the 5 as they call it in Los Angeles, to the Dodgers. The Giants are another team. I mean, you could see the Jays. There are a number of teams that could be in on these top pitchers. Montgomery has been linked to many of these teams, including Boston, where his wife is a resident en route to becoming a doctor in Boston. So maybe that has an allure for him. St. Louis has been linked to him. I can see a number of teams in on Montgomery as well. And there are other good kind of, I guess, mid-tier guys still left. Ryu, who was at one point an ace and signed an $80 million deal with Toronto, came back last year and performed. That's a guy that somebody will sign for probably a 2-year deal, something like that. You've got Mike Clevenger, obviously a guy with talent who's got some little issues that people have known about. And of course, Mike Lorenzen, who was an all-star last year, did not finish the year well with Philadelphia, although he did throw a no-hitter at one point. So, and our old friend Noah Syndergaard still out there. So, I mean, there's an interesting mix of starting pitchers out there, but the most interesting thing is that there are 2 top of the rotation starters. And some people will say, well, look at Jordan Montgomery. They remember him with the Yankees. He was a mid-rotation. He wasn't even going to be in the playoff rotation. Well, you know what? He won 2 games against the Astros in the ALCS, helped them win the World Series. I mean, he became a top of the rotation starter, somewhat by necessity with the injury to Scherzer, and DeGrom, frankly. But he did, and he helped his team win the World Series. So, 2 top of the rotation guys still out there, and that's really what makes it interesting.
Yeah. So, John, I want to bring this all home and finally talk about the hitters now on the market. Cody Bellinger's still out there. We haven't talked about him much. I mean, where's the market for him? Where's the market for Matt Chapman? There's some decent bats still out there, some all-star level bats, if we're being frank, out there on the market for all these teams.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Bellinger has been an all-star multiple times. He was an MVP with the Dodgers, top 10 MVP last year with the Cubs. Hit 306 with an 881 OPS. So outstanding all-around player. And, I've been speculating potentially the Angels, but at this point, they don't seem like they want to spend that kind of money. The most obvious solution for Bellinger would be go back to the Cubs, because he regained his form there, has an old hitting coach back from the Dodgers there, obviously helped him I do believe that he'd love to go back to the North Side. I do believe they'd like to have him back. I think they recently had a fan fest in which the fans wanted him back, the players wanted him back. So I mean, the Cubs are the favorite to re-sign Bellinger, but certainly still out there. The Blue Jays are looking for a bat, and they'd like a left-handed bat, so that's potential for them. They did sign Kevin Kiermaier, but you wouldn't think that would preclude a Bellinger signing. Potentially, the Giants, although they did sign Jung-Hoo Lee for a lot of money to play center field, so that's a little bit less likely. And the Mariners are the other team that kind of makes sense for Bellinger. Chapman, to me, the Giants have always made sense. They just obviously haven't come together on the price. Bob Melvin, his old manager from the A's, is there in San Francisco, as is Farhan Zaidi, the baseball president, who was in the A's front office when Chapman was there. So they make sense, as does Toronto still, frankly. I mean, right now, Isaiah Falefa looks like their third baseman. I think they signed him to be a utility guy. So, I mean, they could end up signing Urshela or somebody else, but they did have Chapman. They do like Chapman. They did make him an offer in spring training. So, to me, the Jays would make a lot of sense as well. Cubs, I'm not going to rule out. And, the Mariners right now, they traded their third baseman, Eugenio Suarez, to Arizona. So they're another possibility. JD Martinez, again, the Blue Jays, I think, are a potential for any of these guys. Soler also potentially for the Blue Jays. It's another guy who's out there. We forget about him. So there are a lot of good hitters out there. Justin Turner, who really did a nice job with Boston, and even before that was great with the Dodgers after being with the Mets. So a lot of good hitters still out there on the market.
Yeah, John is a great point. There's still a lot of people out there looking to find that team. And we appreciate you as always just giving us some time and elaborating on what the market is currently at. And we're looking forward to pitchers and catchers in spring training. It's right around the corner. Thank you as always, John.
All right. Good talking to you, Ryan.